Republicans are dominating the 2024 Senate elections according to my updated forecast. Today, I'll be sharing with you guys my Senate map prediction so you guys can see exactly how the GOP is going to take back control of the upper chamber of Congress, which is going to be vital if President Trump wants to get anything done in his second term. Republicans haven't won a Senate majority since 2018, but they certainly are on track to do so in 2024. And so to begin, we're going to fill in the solid seats for both parties. These are seats that the Democrats or the Republicans are going to win by 15 percentage points or more. Many of these Senate races are not going to be competitive. We have incumbents running for re-election, and incumbency matters a whole lot on the Senate level. So we're going to begin with the safe blue seats. Democrats are easily going to hold on to their senators in Washington, California, Hawaii, as well as New York, Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Delaware. While for the GOP, they're easily going to carry Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, both races in Nebraska, Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, Indiana, and West Virginia. This West Virginia seat right now is actually currently held by a Democrat, that being Joe Manchin. Manchin won his re-election by 3.2% in 2018. At this time, he is no longer running for re-election because he knew that he wasn't going to defeat Jim Justice, the Republican nominee. Justice is the very popular governor of West Virginia. And also something you'll notice is that Republicans start off with just a lot more seats because they simply aren't defending as many. And that's one of the key reasons why they have such a huge advantage going into this November's election. So we already have the first flip on the map, West Virginia in favor of the Republicans. So with the solid states filled in for both parties, the Republicans lead with 48, Democrats at 38. The GOP is already just 2 seats away from half the chamber. And so we're now going to fill in the likely states, which will be decided by margins between 7 to 15 points. They're going to be noticeably more competitive, but one candidate will still have a clear edge. We'll start off with the likely red states, first in Texas, where Ted Cruz is seeking a third term. He's running against Democrat Colin Allred, who isn't going to perform nearly as well as Beto O'Rourke did 6 years ago. O'Rourke made this state competitive. He was a strong nominee in a blue wave year. He lost Texas by just 2.6%. In 2024, we are not seeing that happen again for the Democrats. Ted Cruz is easily defeating Colin Allred in the polls. He leads by 6% in the average. In the end, he is going to win by significantly more. The Lone Star State will be the first likely state on our map, and it is favored to go in favor of the GOP. Moving on now to Florida. This is actually going to be the last seat that Republicans are defending on this map. Every remaining seat in gray after we fill in Florida is going to be one that is currently held by Democrats. So they have to defend 12 competitive seats this cycle. That is why they are in such a terrible position when it comes to retaining their majority. And Florida, of course, is going to remain red. Rick Scott is running for re-election to a second term. He did very well back in 2018. Nobody thought this race was even going to be that close, but in the end, Scott somehow defeated Bill Nelson, who is the 3-time Democratic incumbent running for a 4th term. In the polling today, Scott leads by just over 4 points, but again, we all know he is going to do much better than that. Florida is a likely to solid red state at this point, and so the Sunshine State, the final GOP state that they're defending, is going to be likely red, just like Texas. Next up for the Democrats, with them defending 12 competitive seats, there is going to be a spectrum in terms of how close these races are going to be. There is still a handful of seats the Democrats are going to retain pretty easily. We're now going to get into the likely blue states, beginning in New Mexico, where Martin Heinrich is running for re-election to a 3rd term. He currently leads by nearly 10 points in the polls. He won by 24 points in the last election, so yes, he's doing much worse than he did last time, but he is still the favorite. New Mexico is going to be likely blue. Up in Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar is running for re-election to a 4th term. She is now a big-name Democrat. She did surprisingly well in the 2020 Democratic primaries. She went a lot further than anyone could have thought. She leads by 13 points in a race. Just for context, she won by 24 last time, but she is still the favorite. Minnesota is going to be likely blue. And then in Virginia, Tim Kaine is on track to winning a 3rd term. He's running against Hung Cao. This race is not going to be that close, with Kaine leading by 12 points in the polls. So we have a 3rd likely blue state. Before I continue, 85% of you guys are not subscribed, so please take the time to subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November. And join my Discord server to chat with me personally. Link in the description below. Moving on now to the two final likely states on this map, New Jersey and Maryland. Two states that are going to be a lot more competitive than they are in presidential elections. In New Jersey, Andy Kim is the Democratic nominee. He is poised to win here. He leads by 9 points in the polling, but this race is a lot closer than expected due to Bob Menendez, the previous senator from the state who resigned just a month ago. He has been convicted multiple times for bribery, and he really is pulling down the Democratic Party in New Jersey. That is why this race is so close. It is only going to be likely blue. However, in Maryland, this race is close for a different reason. This time, it's because Republicans have put up basically their best possible nominee, the former two-term governor Larry Hogan. He is very popular in the state, and the only reason why he's losing is because these Senate races do have national implications. He is still going to vote with most of the GOP legislation, which is why many Democrats in Maryland, which leans in favor of the Democrats by 30 points, many of them simply don't want another Republican senator, no matter who it is. But still, Hogan is doing much better than any other Republican could have. Also, Brooks leads by just under 7 points in the polling, but in the end, Kamala Harris is going to win Maryland by around 20 to 25 points. She is going to help her out, and so this race will remain in Democratic hands. However, it will be a lot closer than it should be. We're now going to fill in the lean states. These states will be decided by margins between 2 to 7 points. They realistically could go either way, but one candidate is still slightly favored. And so we're going to begin with the one lean Republican state, and that, of course, is Montana, where Jon Tester is going to lose his seat. He's running for a fourth term as a Democrat. When he first won his seat nearly 20 years ago, the country was a lot less polarized. Montana was much more open to electing a Democrat. That is no longer the case. Montana is now a deep red state. Trump won the state by a solid margin in both of the last two elections, and today Tim Sheehy is on track to win his first 6-year term. He leads in the polling average by 5.2% and has led in every single poll since the summer. We saw that back earlier this year, Jon Tester actually looked like he was poised to win re-election. That is no longer the case. Montana is going to flip red. This is going to be the second flip on the map in favor of the GOP, and this officially gives them a foolproof majority. There's no case where there will be a tie anymore. Currently, with a 50-50 Senate, Democrats have the vice presidency. They would be able to break those ties in favor of their own party. But with 51 seats, even if Democrats somehow win the presidency and still have that vice presidential tie-breaking vote, nothing will really come to a tie, and Republicans will have full control. Next up, in Nevada, this is a race where Democrats are still favored. Now, Republicans could still come out on top here. Things can still change in the next 50 days, but at this point, it does seem like Jackie Rosen is on track to winning her re-election. She won her seat back in 2018 against incumbent Dean Heller. Unseating an incumbent by 5 points is pretty impressive in a state as competitive as Nevada. Generally, Nevada is shifting to the right, and Trump is probably going to win the state in the presidential election, but on the Senate level, Sam Brown simply isn't delivering. In the polls, he's behind by nearly a 10-point margin. The Silver State is going to remain blue on the Senate level, at least based on everything that we're seeing right now, with Jackie Rosen on track to winning a second 6-year term, but it's still going to be lean blue. I do see her winning by just under 7 points. The presidential race is going to be very close. In a midterm year, Democrats might do better here. You're less constrained by the competitiveness of those presidential elections, but in 2024, we have a highly contentious race at the top of the ticket, which is going to make Nevada more competitive. And the final lean state on this map is going to be Pennsylvania, which might come as a bit of a surprise considering that Bob Casey won his re-election by 13 points 6 years ago. The Keystone State is going to be the most important election in the presidential race, and that is why Pennsylvania Senate election, as a result, will also be very competitive. David McCormick is the Republican nominee. He's a pretty strong candidate. He's behind by 4.5% in the polling. Casey is still the favorite, but this is definitely a race to watch. Really, the only reason why Casey is winning is because he is the incumbent. If this was an open seat, it really could go either way. So Democrats are lucky that Casey is running for a fourth term, and in the end, they are probably going to win. But Pennsylvania's election will be made a lot more competitive by the contentious presidential race, and that is why it is going to be lean blue, very different from what we saw in 2018. And now we're left with just 4 seats. They're all going to be decided by tilt margins, which means that they will go to either candidate by less than 2 percentage points. We're going to begin in Ohio, where Sherrod Brown is running for re-election to a 4th term against Bernie Moreno. And Sherrod Brown is probably going to go down this time around. He survived 2018, winning by nearly 7 points. Today, he leads by 4 points in the polling average. But 6 years ago, this was a blue wave year, and Ohio today is a lot more conservative than it was even just 6 years ago. Ohio is a solid red state. We saw Governor Mike DeWine get reelected by 20 points. Bernie Moreno is not the greatest Republican nominee. There were better choices, but he will be enough for the GOP to flip this seat. The Buckeye State is going to go red. Now Republicans will control both of its Senate seats, with, of course, J.D. Vance being the state's other senator. Next up in Arizona, this is another state where we have a close presidential election, just like Nevada and Pennsylvania. That's automatically going to make this race competitive. And looking at the candidates, we have Carrie Lake for the GOP, Ruben Gallego for the Democrats. Both are seeking the seat currently held by independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who will not be running for re-election. And so Carrie Lake lost the governorship in 2022 against Katie Hobbs. She is now seeking public office once again, and it doesn't seem like she is doing too much better. She's behind by 4.3% to Ruben Gallego in the polls. Gallego is a pretty generic Democratic nominee. This race can definitely get a lot closer. I don't see it as impossible for Lake to win. She's definitely doing a lot better than she was just a month ago, but she is still not performing where she needs to be. Donald Trump is constantly doing better than her in every single poll released, and so right now, Arizona is going to be tilt in favor of the Democrats. And finally, up in the Midwest, we have 2 races left in Wisconsin and Michigan. Democrats currently hold both of the seats. In Wisconsin, the incumbent is running, that of course being Tammy Baldwin. She is seeking a 3rd term. She leads in the polls by around 4.7%, but polling in Wisconsin has been notorious for overestimating Democrats, and she has started to lose some of that lead over the last month with a very competitive presidential race in Wisconsin. This election is going to go down to the wire. I still do have Tammy Baldwin as the favorite, but it is going to be very, very close. And then in Michigan, this is actually an open seat with Debbie Stabenow, the incumbent, not seeking a 4th term. Alyssa Slotkin is running against Mike Rogers for the seat. Slotkin is a current member of the House, Rogers a former member, and according to the polling, Slotkin leads by 5.1%. In 2020, this is how much Democrats were supposed to win the Michigan Senate election by when they were running the incumbent, and in the end, Gary Peters only won his re-election by 2 points. So Michigan, it can definitely get very, very competitive, and it's probably going to be competitive in 2024, a lot more competitive than what the polls are telling us. And again, especially with a very close race in the presidential election, Michigan is also going to go down through the wire, and it is going to be tilt blue. I do still have Slotkin slightly favored, but all 3 of these tilt blue states, they really could flip. Republicans have a very good chance. They have 45 days left approximately, and they should be doing everything they can to make it count, and we'll see on November 5th if they're successful. And so according to my updated 2024 Senate map prediction, Republicans are on track to flip Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia, with Democrats making not a single gain, and Republicans will come out with 52 seats while reclaiming the Senate majority. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November, and follow me on Twitter for daily political updates. Link in the description below.